Welcome back to Comic Crackle. I'm your host Kirby, and today you're watching Motherbox News, your trusted source from the source. And today we're going to be talking about The New Gods Issue 8 by Ram V Evan Cagle, Stepan Morian, and Pablo M. Collar. The issue opens up with a 3-page sequence by Stepan Morian that showcases the origin of how Highfather became Highfather. This is the retelling of the origins for both the war with New Genesis and Apocalypse, but also Darkseid and Highfather. It originates from New Gods Issue 7 by Jack Kirby, titled The Pact. Before he rose to lead New Genesis, Highfather's name was Isaiah, and he was married to a woman named Avia. At the time, Darkseid was underneath his mother as she was the matriarch of Apocalypse, and realistically, the next in line would be Steppenwolf. In Jack Kirby's story, Steppenwolf is tricked into killing Avia by machinations that are set into place by Darkseid. The death of Avia would then lead to a war that would decimate the planet of New Genesis, as well as attacking Apocalypse. During this time, Isaiah was known to be the champion of Apocalypse in the same way that Orion is known to be now. Keep that in mind, we're going to come back to that later in this issue. Once he loses Avia, Isaiah goes on a mission to seek vengeance. And during this time, Isaiah has a revelation of sorts, which basically is saying that violence is succumbing to the level of Darkseid. And to oppose Darkseid, you have to be better. So after this revelation, Isaiah puts down his weapons and he goes into the desert and asks what he is supposed to do at this point. And once he's about to give up all hope, that's when he discovers the source. Upon discovering the source, Isaiah is able to make that leap from being Isaiah the inheritor to Highfather and leader of New Genesis. It's been my reading since the first time I read New Gods that Isaiah's journey is one of pacifism. It's a meditation on the impacts of violence and the needlessness of war. It's an examination of what violence does to us, and seeking revenge is only going to get you diminishing returns. The pencils in these 3 pages by Stepan Morian really evoke the emotion and the turmoil that Highfather is going through. Much like his work on 20th Century Men, it's able to put the reader into the perspective and the eyes of the protagonist as they have this revelation. I'm also just in shock of the way that Ram V is able to portray what the source is, showing that it's not good or bad, it's kind of just there. It is, in the similar way that Darkseid is. With Hyman's monologue stating, "It is a fool's errand to attribute motivations to the source's many interventions. To think we understand what it wants is an act of hubris, the act of a small mind trying to comprehend an impossible truth, like a child trying to capture the sun in their palms." Isaiah believes the source showed him his path, set him upon the course to his destiny. He believes this with the fervency of the faithful, though understandably I am unconvinced, and I have told him as much. I would like to think whatever strength he found to return to us as Highfather, whatever dreams saved him in the desert, they were his own. Always. Perhaps it is useful to think of it this way. The light of the source cannot show you where to go. It exists only to help you find yourself in the dark. Once we return to the present, we're able to see as the New Gods and the Justice League are setting up this new sort of base of operations. Highfather is obviously still deeply troubled, but he's trying not to make it so apparent. He thanks Superman and the Justice League for helping them in their time of need and saying if they can ever repay this debt, then they will. At this point, Superman attempts to say he's just glad that everybody's safe, and with Highfather cutting him off and just apologizing for the trouble that they might have caused. Once he says this, Highfather walks away without another word into the shadows, with Shadowfall and Akala explaining quietly that he's been like this since they lost Solace. Mr. Miracle then chimes in and says, "They're all hurting, Superman. Superman, gods who've been reminded of their mortality. They've lost their home, their friends. They need something to hold on to. And Superman replies, "You've been around here long enough to understand, Scott. When the chips are down, sometimes even gods need reminding of the value of the little things. Sit down, breathe, count the ones still here. Remember the ones who were lost." It's at this point that Scott makes a proclamation to all of the new gods, naming this new place that they've founded New Light, but also calling for a type of feast, and more specifically, a Win Heth, or a feast of the gods. When reading this and the previous issues, I did make a note that the new gods have referred to Superman by his Kryptonian name, and I appreciate that he's looked at as almost like a leader or a figurehead of Earth, but also accepted as one of them. So with this, I reached out to Ram V to ask him to describe what he believes the relationship and the importance of the relationship between Superman and the fourth world is, with him saying,
"I'm not sure I buy into the idea of them thinking of Superman as one of their own. I know there's been theories about Superman being a new god, etc., but just philosophically, I think Superman himself would be opposed to the idea of anyone thinking of him as a god. That said, the reason they refer to him, or it felt right to me that they refer to him by the name Kal-El, is because these are, the new gods are entities that to me know of and respect the origin of things. There is great power in knowing the true names of things, and for them, Superman is a moniker, whereas Kal-El is at the heart of who he is. And yes, of course, they respect him as a leader. I think to their understanding, they would consider him to be one of the champions of Earth, if you will. And it's fitting that the new gods would think of these characters that they come across as champions or heroes, if you will, because that is something that fits their own understanding of who these protectors are, if you will. Besides that, their relationship with Superman, I imagine, is one of mutual respect. I think they do accept him as a friend. There's been plenty of adventures where the new gods and forever people have interacted with Superman. So yeah, all on good and friendly terms, I imagine. Perhaps more trusting of him than most other superheroes from the mainline Earthbound DCU.
Thanks, Ram. Now back to the issue. The next scene picks up with Miss Martian and Mr. Terrific as they're doing some detective work on the other signature of people from the fourth world that landed on Earth. They were able to track the energy signature to somewhere that is owned by Maxwell Lord. Obviously, if you know and you're caught up on the New Gods, you would know that Maxwell Lord is working under the influence of Metron for the side of anti-life, and more specifically Apocalypse. Just as they're about to uncover the reason that Max Lord had the energy signatures and is seemingly working with the side of Apocalypse, they're then confronted with the militia that Max owns. We then get a small fight scene that kind of is a parallel between the Mr. Terrific and the latest Superman film, which I really did appreciate that, but also Miss Martian and using her abilities in such a cool and eye-catching way. Pablo Collar really knocked it out of the park with this one. We then cut back to New Light, but in the perspective of Seraphin. Now we know that Seraphin is working along the side of Apocalypse, but right now he's putting on airs that he is one of the New Gods and he's actually aligned with New Genesis. Akala greets him and then asks about the rest of the Forever people, with Seraphin kind of just brushing it off and saying it's complicated. This starts opening up the questions for what happened to the Forever people and where are they? But I guess we're gonna have to wait and find out. Moving on into the actual Feast of the Gods and seeing the little bits of dialogue and interactions between people that you wouldn't really pair up usually, it really just made me love it so much more. Just a glimpse of what those conversations are just really brought me into this scene and made me feel like I was just sitting at the table and just hearing aspects of what they're talking about. But one thing I didn't like is that Hal Jordan was making fun of Akala because she's the god of doors. How? I'll get you, buddy. Speaking of Akala, let's cut to our community question that's asked by @FinestSoup, who says, I would love to know more about Akala and Ra How. I assume they'll fill some role in the story and we'll learn about them then, but any trivia or tidbits he could share would be cool. Also, when will we get to see Evan Cagle draw Good Rickles? Great question about Akala, but I really want to know about Good Rickles. Ram?
On Akala and Rahu, yeah, these are both original creations that we pulled into the story simply because I wanted the new gods and gods to show the shape of the world that we live in. And these are supposed to be gods of various aspects and ideas from across the world. And so godliness being a cultural artifact, I imagine there will be lots of gods from lots of different cultures represented within this pantheon, if you will. Akala I modeled after the idea of the Dwarpal in Hindu mythology. I always found it funny and interesting that there were gods that were in charge of guarding doorways. Yeah, I was always fascinated by this idea of someone who was the god of doors, and we've seen Akala use that magic to great effect within the series itself. Rahu is also modeled after a deity that is quite well known in Hindu and Buddhist mythology, very closely associated with the eclipse. We haven't gotten to see a lot of him in the series so far, but it's also, one of the pitfalls of having a series with such a wide and large cast. Screen time is limited, and I think, if we get a season 2, which is a possibility, then we might have more room to show off some of what Rahu can do. As for their histories and origins and whatnot, I think I'll just wait for the story to reveal them. When will we see Evan draw Goody Rickles? Yeah, I'm not sure. I think if I ask Evan to draw any more than he already is, he might actually physically hit me. So I think we'll have to be a bit patient for that.
Thanks, Ram. Now back to the issue. The scene goes on to depict vignettes of conversation devoid of dialogue, with Highfather looking like he has something to say. It's then that he says, I wanted to thank you all for your help, your welcome in this feast, but I have been unable to find the words because my heart is broken. I fought so hard to save a dream, yet I failed to save the children that came of it. I call myself Highfather no more, and you will choose from among yourselves a new hand to hold the Heka. I will be Isaiah once again. This is a symbolic gesture, obviously saying that he will no longer be Highfather, but also saying he's not going to lead the people of New Genesis. And from this moment, we cut to a reaction shot with everybody turning to look at Orion. Of course, I love this scene, but if we go back to the conversation that we were having about earlier, where Isaiah, before becoming Highfather, was the champion of New Genesis, this of course makes sense for Orion to fill that role. If you read books like Walt Simonson's Orion, we know what this trajectory could look like, but in that series, Highfather is dead, and in this, he's very much alive. He just feels disgraced. If I didn't already use up my 2 questions for Ram V, I would ask him about this, but honestly, I feel like it would be giving away future reveals going down the line with further issues. Moving on in the story, we cut over to the side of Apocalypse and we find out what they've been monitoring in space. It shows that Maxwell Lord is describing his base of operations to Darkseid, and Darkseid points out that there's an anomaly in space and it just might be a black hole, with Max saying, but Darkseid, this one is special. All the black holes we know of pull in matter, light, and space, and give away very little. Traces of radiation, bits of information, but this one, it's been throwing up all kinds of information. Part of my little project, staring out into the void beyond, has been to discern what this information means. I think it is an echo of a reality beyond our own, a strange skewed mirror that was formed with Darkseid's death. What if he never died, Darkseid? What if he is yet looking through the glass at us? What if he is, with his mere presence, expressing a gravity so vast that it eats space and swallows light? What if he is? Now, if you know what's going on at DC right now, that is the absolute universe that was spawned by Darkseid's death, or apparent death. So this scene seemingly is the first instance of the mainline universe discovering the absolute universe. And it's also this revelation that rallies the troops of Apocalypse to really come together to go and get Kamal to present to Darkseid, because it's his will. In the last scene of the issue, we see as Isaiah is sitting underneath a tree. He's depressed, he's lacking definition, he doesn't know where his life is going next. Very similar to what he was showcasing in the Pact and becoming Highfather. A storm comes in and he looks to the sky and he's asking what his purpose is, with Scott and Barda presenting to him with Olivia, and Scott saying, Barda and I, this is Olivia, my daughter. And Barda saying, we thought you might like to see her. And we see as Highfather is renewed with life and understanding and appreciation. And it's scenes like this that I absolutely love about the New Gods. They are more than human, but they exhibit some of these same personality traits that we would have. They just do it on a larger scale. Much like Grant Morrison says about Superman, we can't magically bring Light Ray back, but there is a light ray of sunshine in Olivia Free. Okay, I'm sorry about that one. And this is where we're gonna leave it with this episode of Motherbox News. And don't forget to go and pick up The New Gods issue number 9 on August 20th. And as always, trust the source.